Hey guys, this is Bonnie, and today I'm going to be talking about potting succulents. When you order your succulents online, you're probably going to get a little cutting like this, and it may have a little bit of a stem here, it may not. If you're planning on doing any type of topiary arrangements, you're going to want a stem that you can actually put into the moss for your arrangement. If you are actually potting it in some soil, you do not need that. Now for our soil, we are going to want to use a cactus mix because succulents need a lot of good drainage, and the cactus mix is going to have a lot of sand in it that's going to help with that drainage. But anyway, I have a number of different varieties that I'm going to be potting, and so let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so you can see here I already have a few succulents that I've done. These were just rosettes that were already ready to go to be potted, or in some cases I had, well, here's a good example. So I have some of these where they've gotten a little spread out, either from not enough sunlight or just from age. And so what I want to do is I want to get these more compact again. So I'm going to take my pruners and I'm just going to prune right here below that main head. And all I'm going to do is set this on top of the soil. I've already filled these with my cactus potting mix. Now I still have, I got a little baby one here too. I still have the stem, and this stem is still healthy, even though it doesn't have any leaves on it. So what I can do, and what I'm going to do, is I'm going to go ahead and stick this in one of my other containers, and I'm just going to see if that produces another plant for me. Same thing. So here's a little one that I cut off. Here's a little one. Well, that's not a little one, but here's another stem from one that I had cut the heads off of. Now, here's an example of one where it's gotten spread out, but it's not just one main cluster on the top. But I really want this to stay compact. So what I'm going to do is I am just going to trim right up here at the top. So I just have this little tiny like rosette there. And those little tops are usually what you're going to be using if you're doing any succulent arrangements. And it's most commonly what you're going to be getting if you order cuttings, and this will grow in size, you know, after it roots and gets established. Now I have all of these little leaves that were on the stem from where it got all spread out, and I am just going to put these leaves on top of the soil over here. And you can see I did something similar with the leaves over here. And these leaves will actually root and produce a whole other plant. And I'm just going to go ahead and set them on the soil. And then once they do start to root and produce, then that's when I'll move them to their own pots. And now I have this stem here, and I'm just going to go ahead and stick it over here and see if it'll produce for me. All right, I have a little bit different variety over here. This looks like one that may have been one plant that well, maybe not. It's just more than likely it was 3 leaves that were really close together, and then they all formed their own plants, because I am able to very carefully, semi-carefully, separate these roots. And you can see along this stem where it's actually producing new roots from where the stem was close to the soil. So again, now this is not one that's going to stay a tight cluster like this, so I don't need to worry about trimming it really close to keep it a tight cluster. So I'm going to leave a little bit of stem. I'm just going to trim that off, and I'm going to put it in the soil here. And then this, I'm going to go ahead and put in here. And then there's a good chance that's going to produce more leaves. So same thing here. Now you want to be careful when you are doing cuttings like this. Really the best thing to do is once you cut it, you let that harden off and then you put it in the soil. but it's not necessary. You just want to make sure that it has good drainage. It's not going to stay wet, and that'll prevent it from rotting. And the nice thing, if you do get cuttings online, even if you don't buy a lot, you can see how these can produce over time, and then you end up with a lot more succulents than what you originally paid for. I have a few over here that now, if you look at this one carefully, you can see this is a stem of an original plant, and this is another little succulent that grew off of it. I'm not going to separate that right now. I'm just going to go ahead and plant the whole thing over here. And these, like some of these, I probably could, actually, I am going to do that. I'm going to go ahead, cut the top off of here, plant that stem in that pot, and then I'll go ahead and plant that there. And then here is another one that ends up being a rather tall succulent. It's got some dead leaves towards the bottom there. But I'm going to trim down here where it's a little more woody. Put that one in there. And then this guy I'm going to go ahead and put over here. Now if you'll notice, and I'm going to have to get another tray. If you'll notice, I also have some aloes over here. And these are also considered succulents, so they're going to be potted the same way. But succulents, rather than their babies producing off of the stem or off of a leaf, these will actually produce or multiply off of the roots. So what happened is I had one aloe plant that was in a pot, and then what it did is it produced all of these other aloe plants from its root. So what I'm going to do with these is the same thing I did with the rest of my succulents, is I'm going to use the containers with the cactus potting soil, and then this bottom part here, and this one's interesting because it somehow, like this part kind of grew up, but then it ended up rooting here. So these are now two separate plants that I can plant separately. Got a little baby aloe there. So I'm going to also plant them just like I did these. And once they root and get established, they're going to end up producing more babies in those pots and getting larger. And I could even plant them in something bigger once they're a little more established. Now, once I have these in these containers, I do not want to put these in the sun until they get established, because I don't want to stress them too much. So I'm going to have them in bright shade, minimal watering. Really, we're in our rainy season, so we're getting a lot of rain anyway, so I'm not going to water them beyond that. Succulents need minimum moisture. Too much moisture could actually cause them to rot. And so they are just going to stay like this, and I'll keep checking on them. And then once they do get a little more established, then I can start slowly introducing them to sunlight, but I want to be careful that I don't burn the leaves. But ultimately, once you have acclimated them to full sun, then they can make a very nice succulent garden in an area where you may have a difficult time growing other types of plants. Okay, so there you have it. As you can see, planting succulents in soil is a very easy process. They really require very minimal maintenance, and they're very easy to propagate. So I hope that you will consider adding them to your garden and to your landscaping. Thanks. Bye.